Excellent, man. It's good to be back in front of you across the screen, Benjamin. It's very rare that I'm on a Zoom call and I don't see like the 60 faces that are here. And so I definitely feel like I'm just talking to myself. But I see some familiar names in the chat there. David, Julie, Yulia. Excellent. Well, good. This morning, what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about Encore Search Partners, the firm that I founded in January of 2013. And I wanted to basically provide a little bit of insight into the roadmap that we've built in order to go from just an idea, right, in 2013 to now having 40 full-time employees. We're actually all in office, in-house. I know a lot of people in the recruitment industry think that that's a little bit of an antiquated model. Um, but uh, but we're all in-house, and this year we're trending to do 14 million in revenue. And so we don't do any staffing, we don't do any contractors. We're all direct hire only. And so excellent. Let me walk you guys through a little 5-point PowerPoint presentation. And then after I give that insight, I would love for everybody in the audience to write down some great engaging questions for me at the end. But to lead into that, I think there were some questions sent to me by, my friends and followers in the audience that I wanted to address that Benjamin's going to ask me. And so let's just jump into it. And so I think for you guys to see me as a credible resource, I think it's important to talk a little bit about my business, right? Is this a guy that we even want to learn from? And so let me give you guys some insight. My first company I founded whenever I was 26 years old, it was a lead generation firm called Market Share Solutions. That was way back in 2010. I'd done a good job of building that business up to about 250,000 in revenue, which isn't bad, right? In your mid to late 20s, but I couldn't scale beyond that, right? I was the one having to go in and consult with the clients, develop the go-to market strategy, implement all the information systems to generate leads. And I knew that there had to be a better way to build a sustainable, scalable, profitable business other than just owning a company where I worked for myself. And so uh, in late 2012 or 2012, I took a look at my client base and I saw that about half of my clients were staffing and recruiting companies. And so in January of 2013, I decided to scrap lead generation and just start a recruiting company. And so my core focus was generating business development leads, so job orders. And then I hired recruiters in order to find candidates for the requisitions that I personally brought in. And so we changed the business model in 2013. Today, we've got 40 employees on staff. Over the years, we've brought in over 800 signed fee agreements, of which there's probably about 150 clients that are active within the last 12 months. Over the last 13 years, we've made over 1,700 direct hire placements, resulting in over $72 million in direct hire recruiting fees. And so that's a number that I actually didn't know until I was preparing for this meeting. This year, we're trending to do about 13.8 or 14.2, somewhere in that range. And so really, really excited about potentially ending the year at over 75 million in direct hire billings. I am engaged. I got engaged back in February of this year. I have 3 young sons. They're 13, 11, and 9. And I joined EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, way back in 2018 when we were doing about 2.4 million in revenue. One of the most pivotal things that I got from EO was I learned about EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so my leadership team and we've been together since late 2017. We started implementing EOS at that time. And I do personally identify as an expert in EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And for that reason, we do get a lot of integrator searches. And whenever I'm talking to other entrepreneurs and business owners, just speaking that EOS vernacular has definitely gained a lot of trust and rapport and credibility with prospects as well. So that's one thing for you guys that own small businesses to look into. ESP by the numbers. And so if you look way back in 2013, I rounded off to the nearest thousandth of a dollar. but we were about 550. Then we hit 880, 990, 1.2. I look at these recruiters on LinkedIn and them bragging about, what they're doing in their first year. Man, it took me a long time in business to even hit 1 million in revenue. And so, for those of you guys that are doing in your first year, kudos to you. You're definitely ahead of the game. Whenever you look at somebody, like myself. 2017, we really started to catch some momentum there. As I mentioned, we started implementing EOS. 2018, 4 million, then 4.6. 2020, we took a little bit of a step back. We had a bad Q2. I think everybody in direct hire recruiting had a horrible Q2. Fortunately, we did get some PPP money, and that allowed us to keep the doors open and keep everybody employed. 2021 was a great year. 2022 was actually our record year. That's not uncommon of what I hear from a lot of my competitors in the direct hire space. 2023, it felt like we were working harder just to get the same number of revenue. 2024 was a little bit of a down year for us. That was a huge ego hit, that it was the first year in the last 3 years that I didn't hit 10 million in revenue, right? And so it really caused me to reflect on, you know, what mistakes I had made, what market opportunity did I had miss. And fortunately, we heavily rebounded because I did a proactive job at filling in the gaps, right, in the areas that we needed to improve. And so, one big takeaway that I want the audience that are all direct hire recruiters to have by looking at this chart, guys, is when you look at the placements and you look at the average fee, you can see that the easiest way to grow revenue, guys, is to raise your fees. And sometimes in direct hire recruiting, that means going from 20% to 25% or 25% to 30%. But for us, the way that we applied it to our business model is we just started to go up market, right? And so, you know, could we do an 80K corporate buyer role for a steel fabricator? Of course, but it probably wasn't going to be something that I would brag about on social media, right? We were bragging about the presidents, the CFO placements, the COO, the CTO, the executive VP, the managing partner of the law firm, the people that were commercializing new practice areas and bringing in, 9-figure revenue streams to organizations as product line directors. And so what you'll find is that your branding and the message that you put out to the community needs to be congruent with where you see yourself going, right? And one of the ways that we were able to essentially top grade the job orders that we worked on is we started to actually put that content out into social media, and so we attracted what we put out. And so, I'm proud to say that this year, we're trending to finish the year at over 58,000 as our average direct hire fee. We are a 25% recruiting shop. We've got some clients above that. We do a little bit of retained, but for the most part, about 98% of our placements are going to be contingency searches. Another thing that you'd love to see here, we didn't even have our $1 million biller until 2021, guys. This was, after being in business for 8 years, right? And then you can see the consistency of having the top biller in the organization be over 1 million. And so, if there's anybody in the audience that's a subject matter expert in a vertical, and you guys aren't billing 1 million, you're probably in the wrong ecosystem. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, my background is in lead generation. And so I don't actually run a desk. I don't do job order intakes. I don't build candidate profiles or do candidate profile calls. I don't even do one-on-ones with the team or trainings. I hire people to do all that. Every day, whenever I come into work, I think, how can I generate opportunities for our producers to work on? And so if you're working for a firm that isn't proactively think about how can they get you more job orders, 100% you're in the wrong ecosystem. So milestones year by year, here's a little bit of insight. In 2013, changed the business model to a recruiting firm. In 2014, obviously, I just hired my friends and family in order to get it off the ground. In 2015, I actually changed the company name from Market Share Solutions, my first business, to Encore Search Partners. And so that name didn't even exist until May 23rd of 2015. In 2016, I hired my first executive EP, my first six-figure base salary person. He's now our division president over our largest practice area. And then I hired Scott Kelly. He was our COO. I knew that I was incredible at generating leads. I knew that I was great at doing job order intakes and building LinkedIn projects and building sophisticated Boolean strings. But I also had the humility to know I wasn't a good coach. I wasn't a good trainer. I lacked patience. I lacked humility. I wanted all the recruiters to be just as good as me, and I think that there's a lot of other incredible direct hire recruiters out there that can't get above that 3 million in revenue mark because they've got that revolving door, that turnover. And that, guys, I would encourage you to be humble enough to say, I need to put in a great leader, somebody that has patience, somebody that understands learning styles, someone that can seek to understand the why, that has the emotional intelligence to coach people through some of the challenges or blocks. Not just saying, this is how you do it because this is the way that I do it, right? That is not going to be a great way to scale your business. And so you could see these two hires in 2016 were pivotal to our growth and success. And the only way that I had the confidence to rip off two six-figure salaries, guys, was because I was making $500,000, 600, $800,000, and I didn't think that that was good enough, right? There's a lot of direct hire recruiters out there that are killing it from a net income standpoint. And if they just thought, man, let me put 300,000 in salaries back into the company, you'd be surprised at by increasing that intellectual capital on the leadership team, what you'd be capable of. And I was still the rainmaker, the lead generator, the business developer, but these two guys were subject matter experts in what they did best. 2017, we started implementing EOS. 2018, I brought everyone from 100% commission to a salary plus commission. We started offering benefits, PTO, 401k. We became a real company, right? It wasn't just the wild, wild west where people were making a bunch of commission, eat what you kill, right? In 2019, we started shopping candidates. A lot of my competitors call it MPCing or skill marketing, but this was also a great way for us to do new business development and new client acquisition. In 2020, we hired an individual to help us commercialize our legal recruiting division. This may not be a surprise to everybody, but a fourth-year associate in a law firm in a big law is going to be $285,000 salary. For a fourth-year associate, guys, this is a 28-year-old young professional, right? These are the salaries that we typically see in the small to mid-sized market for CFOs, COOs, CEOs, presidents, right? And so by seeing how big the salaries were in professional services, I realized, man, it may not be smart to just be chasing the same business model that I've had, right, for the last 5 or 6 years if I know that my fee is always going to be higher whenever I recruit a revenue producer, a revenue generator, somebody that works on billable hours or has a portable book of business. And so I really started to lean into that in 2020. In 2021, we made the decision that we were going to start focusing on only higher level searches. In 2022, our close ratio went through the roof. We were consistently breaking records. We got pickier with the clients that we worked with. We got more intentional about the verticals that we wanted to penetrate. We started doing content marketing and demand generation instead of just lead generation. We started to migrate away from doing email marketing, right? And started to use more sophisticated demand generation platforms. In 2023, we did see revenue slide down for the first time in company history. In 2024, I made the decision that while a lot of my competitors were going to start scaling back because their direct hire revenue billings were taking a hit, that I was actually going to start investing more into my business. And so we promoted quite a few people to mid-level managers. We started to put them through coaching programs like Vistage Worldwide, and getting them certified, in certain coaching aspects. And we started to upskill the team, right? And so, I 2024 was a big year of reinvesting in ourselves in order to seize the day, right? While a lot of my competitors were laying off. In 2025, we got back to breaking records. We started implementing new information systems. And so when you look at some of the most sophisticated tools that are utilized by, the largest direct hire recruiting industries, or firms in the industry, we started to really upgrade our systems. And because we still are a small business at 40 employees, we could customize it, right? We can get way more, um, intentional on having information systems solve business processes and challenges, right? And now we had done a great job of upskilling and top grading our team to where I think that as we lean into how we're going to finish the year in 2025 and what we're going to do in 2026, we're really poised for stealing market share because we've done an incredible job of aggregating data and developing systems to monetize that data in ways that many of our competitors don't do. So, what is EOS? EOS is a set of tools, systems, and processes to help leadership teams get on the same page, gain more traction, and become more healthy, to reduce conflict, to identify, discuss, and solve issues, right? To identify, what are your 1 year, your 3 year, your 10-year goals, right? We created what's called a vision traction organizer to identify what are our values? What is our core focus? What is our go-to market strategy? What is the 1 year, the 3 year picture? What are our quarterly rocks, right? What do we need to get accomplished this quarter? And so by providing this ecosystem to get what's in my brain onto paper and then presenting that to the team, it was an incredible accountability resource that helped me achieve my near and long-term goals because it wasn't just an idea in my head. I was putting it out, right? Um, so what are our core values? What is our why? Integrity is our number one core value. Resilience, gratitude, professionalism, coachable, inquisitive, and competitive, right? These are the non-negotiables that we require out of each and every one of my employees, right? And what I'll say is my employees have the confidence in knowing that they're going to get these core values from myself, right? They're going to get it from my executive team, my leadership team, right? Our vendors, our clients, our candidates, they know our values, right? We talk about it on social media. It's on all of our collateral, right? Our why, we don't try to hide from the fact that we are not in the business of saving whales. We are not a nonprofit organization. Our why, and our clients know it, is to be the best, to close deals, and to make money, right? And if we know that if we're constantly pursuing a better version of ourselves, you might blink and fast forward 13 years and become a $14 million direct hire recruiting firm with layers of mid-level management, rowing the boat all in the same direction, and doing an incredible job of creating a brand that recruits in candidates who are ambitious, hungry, self-motivated. They just lack the training. They lack the ecosystem in order to achieve their own potential. And so what we do is we love to hire people as entry-level recruiters that have zero industry experience, no bad habits. But when I work with our manager of internal talent acquisition, and she says, "Well, what do we look for?" Right? Because we've had some people that have been managers at a Vitamin World or a Bath and Body Works or a college professor, right? Or a bar manager or a restaurant manager or a director of operations in retail. We identified what it takes to be an A player in our organization, and so these are actually publicly posted, right? In the office. They're hanging in my manager of internal talent acquisitions office, right? To where she knows she doesn't need to go out and poach someone from a direct competitor that has 6 months of experience and bad habits, that she can go turn a retail manager into $1 million biller at Encore Search Partners if, right, they have an inquisitive mindset, the ability to explain things the way that others need to receive information. If they're passionate about something, whenever we ask them, hey, what gets you fired up outside of the office? We want to see how they talk about it. What's their voice inflection? What are their mannerisms, right? It could be anything, sports, fitness, whatever floats your boat. Are they optimistic? Do they see the potential of what could go right, not what could go wrong? Are they coachable? Do they continuously improve? What type of content are they consuming on social media? Are they willing to call something out, right, if it doesn't make sense? Or are they just passive order takers? Are they social, never met a stranger? Do they understand what their friends and family do for work? And can they explain it to others? Guys, all the time I have people in an interview and I ask them, hey, what does your mom do for a living? Right? If they can't answer that question, they're probably not going to be a high performer at Encore Search Partners, right? Do they have a high aptitude and strong problem-solving skills? We do administer criteria assessments, right? We want to see how are they scoring on the Wonderlic test. Are they confident in their skills and abilities? And are they responsive and don't have unread text or emails, guys? This might sound crazy, but these are the characteristics that we interview for. It doesn't matter if you're selling insurance or if you're selling cell phones or if you're a special education teacher. Our top biller for 2025 is on track to bill over $1.8 million. And when she started with Encore Search Partners 4 years ago, she was making $19 an hour as a special education teacher. But she has all of these components of an A player. So when you ask, what's the secret sauce? How do you build a company from 0 to 14 million? The way that we did it was myself as the founder, as the principal. I didn't get bogged down in recruiting or operations. I stayed focused on doing business development, marketing, lead generation, demand generation. That was our growth catalyst to bring in people that were hard workers, ambitious, creative problem solvers. And I kept their job order pipeline full because I knew how to generate leads. And so every quarter we administer surveys, right? They're entirely confidential. And we ask them in the surveys, please list 3 words that describe our culture. And the more times that it's mentioned, the bigger it is on this word cloud. And so if you say, what's the culture like at Encore Search Partners? We don't hide from the fact that sometimes it says hustle, right? Sometimes we say KPIs, right? But at the end of the day, we know that the number one common word, according to our own people, is competitive. And if our people are competing with themselves each and every day for their own personal best, call volume, call time, submittals, interviews, billings, submittal to interview ratio, we provide transparency around the data like no other organization I've ever seen, to where we put the accountability in our people's hands, right? So they can be results driven, rewarding, encouraging, winning, right? Innovative, excellence, collaborative, growing, growth minded, resilience, tough, right? If it's not tough, is it really even worth doing? So, Benjamin, it's only been 26 minutes, man. I got through this quick.
Yeah, if you want to
come back on.
Yep, I'm here. Ready to rock and roll with the questions?
Yeah. So you just fire off some questions, and then I'd love to hear some questions from some people that are standing in.
We got some questions in the Q&A, but before I get started, real quick, I'll say this again. If you've gotten something from Jeremy's talk or from the questions and the answers, something that's an absolute game changer, do 2 things. Share it on LinkedIn and share it personally with him. So let's jump into the questions. What separates elite recruiters from average ones?
The thing for us is, I'll tell you, is not everybody can be a truly elite recruiter. That's number one, right? Whenever we've got 28 direct hire recruiters on the team, there's going to be some Chiefs and there's going to be some Indians, right? But what I can say is what separates the elite ones from the average ones is the average ones show up, right? They do their job, they hit their KPIs, and they probably make 150 to $200,000 a year. We need average recruiters. But what separates the average from the elite ones are the elite ones are inquisitive and they really try to understand the why behind the what. They become subject matter experts in the vertical that they recruit in, right? And so if they're getting a call from their oil field services client that needs a manager of business intelligence role filled, and the guy's got to have experience with Tableau data visualization software, a good elite recruiter is going to understand why are they implementing that? Why is this position being created? And then that elite recruiter might uncover two other job orders on that job order intake call, Benjamin.
How do you see AI changing the recruitment industry over the next 3 years?
So what I can say is I'm not an expert on AI. You know, a lot of the content that I read on LinkedIn, there's people that know AI way better than me that have done more research. What I can tell you is that what I see AI doing is startup recruiters are going to have access to the same technology that enterprise level organizations have, right? And so when we look at what, JobBot's done and cybercoders and Michael Page and some other big shops, they've been using a lot of these systems and tools for years because they've got deep pockets to invest in it. But now you've got the startup guy, right? In Conshohocken, New Jersey, that makes it look like that he's a big established direct hire recruiting firm, right? And so the way that we're going to combat that, because we know that there's smaller players that are going to compete with us, is we are going to do a proactive job at showcasing our people, showcasing our wins, showcasing us internally, right? That way, the clients know that they can trust us because of our proven history of success, that we've got rapport with authentic content, and that we've got credibility because of the size of our team, not just how we look like on paper.
What's the most overrated trend in recruiting right now?
I think that the most overrated trend talking about AI is utilizing AI in order to write copy for your LinkedIn posts. Sometimes a lot of the content creators don't even remove the emojis or the M dashes, right? And so, in order for a buyer to do business with us, I think that three things need to be present: trust, rapport, and credibility. And I know myself, whenever I see other people that do that, you lose credibility, right? And so I would say that, if you can produce real, authentic content about the people you're socializing with, the meetings that you're going to, the light bulb moments, the learning events. I think that authenticity will win in an age of AI.
How do you teach recruiters to think like headhunters and not order takers?
That's a great question. That's been one of the toughest things for us to coach on over the years. I think that because of the industries that maybe we recruit from, on the entry level, we find people that have kind of a customer service, background, right? That are great communicators, that are intelligent, but you know, whenever you think like a headhunter versus just an account manager or a recruiter filling a requisition handed to you, I think it's important to really understand what is the business problem that this person is solving for our client, right? Because then you can get way more sophisticated in how you market the role and the message that you're utilizing whenever you're going out cold trying to get passive candidates interested in the role. And so when you think like a headhunter, you're thinking, why would this be a better opportunity than what the person is already doing today? Right. I see so many of my competitors that just go out and find active candidates, whether it's on job boards or whether it's perusing open to work candidates on LinkedIn, that we're in the business of going out and finding people that are gainfully employed, right? But we just do a good job of articulating the unique selling point on what our client is trying to accomplish, and then the candidate can decide, right? Do they want to solve that problem for the organization, right? And so it's a matter of understanding the business challenges is that you're solving that makes you a really great headhunter.
So your top 3 billers, I know one of them used to be a college professor, right? What's the other 2, their backgrounds before they started recruiting?
Yeah, great question. So um, so Katie was a special education teacher. Um, I don't want to give too many personal details, but she was in a position where um, she did not feel so great whenever somebody had judged her for her income level. And Katie was an Instagram follower of mine for many years. And finally, she slid in my DMs one day and said, "Hey, I want to come work for you. I can make cold calls for Encore Search Partners." And whenever we brought her in, I mean, she didn't have the experience. She didn't have any sales at all. She was timid, but she told me, she said, "I will make $100,000 for you. I don't care if you tell me that I need to take out the trash or clean the toilets. You can give me the training, you can give me the resources, and I will do whatever you tell me to do." And that's all I needed to hear 4 years ago in order to give her a shot. And what Katie's done is she's come in, she's done a great job of learning, she's focused on continually improving in all facets of life, not just, recruiting, but how can she be a better colleague, right? How can she be a better aunt? How could she be a better motivator of her friends and inspirer of others, right? She's leveled up, the way that she dresses and her confidence and her poise. And so I would say it's that growth mindset that's what's made her successful. And then, the other top performer is Morgan Haley, right? It's actually Katie's work best friend, and Morgan's been here for 4 years as well, and she was actually a bartender at one of our local bars here in Houston Heights, and I remember hanging out there one day, and she was on her phone, and I was like, "Well, hey, what are you doing?" She said, "Oh, I'm looking for a job. I just graduated." And so I started to probe and see what she wanted to do. She said she wanted to work in sales, and so I gave her a shot, right? And so, these are individuals that are constantly focused on becoming better versions of themselves each and every day. They've got zero ego, zero entitlement. They're coming to leadership saying, "How can I do better? I got skipped over for this promotion. What can I do in order to improve my skills, the way that I speak, the way that I interact with others? Thank you, leaders. Got it." Taking the ego out and really leading from a position of humility and authenticity is something that our top performers do very well.
So those 3 people didn't have a recruiting background. So what's your framework for identifying people to hire?
It's that A player framework that I just walked through, right? And it's funny because it's a different A player framework for each individual team that they're on, right? One of our team is hunters, one of our team is farmers, one of our team, the corporate team, it's all about attention to detail, right? And so recognizing that you guys can all play on the same championship winning team, right? So if we're the Alabama football team, I'm not going to grade my running backs the same way that I grade my defensive backs and my wide receivers and my linebackers and linemen. They've got very different skills that they need to be great at.
How do you hold your recruiters accountable without micromanaging them?
I think that the way that we personally do it is there's a tremendous amount of transparency with the data, right? Their colleagues get reports each and every day on, what's their call volume, what's their call time, how many submittals. All of our submittals are actually sent to a send all folder to where everyone can read each other's submittals. And so I would say that transparency and that authenticity creates an environment where people can't hide, right, from the truth. And so they tend to hold themselves accountable because they've got to answer to judgment from their colleagues, right? And so it's not just leadership. And so I would say transparency and authenticity is the way the reason why we don't need to micromanage. There's alignment with the mission, vision, and most importantly, the core values.
How do you teach your recruiters to become trusted advisors to clients and not just the order taker?
Yeah, I'd mentioned earlier, that really is the biggest challenge to coach on because it doesn't come organically to everyone. I think that becoming a subject matter expert in a vertical is the number one thing that I would encourage every direct hire recruiter to do. So, for an example, if you know that there's a massive demand for firmware engineers for embedded systems that program in C sharp, right? If you solely focus on that vertical, it doesn't matter if you're talking to, right, an embedded systems engineer with 15 years of experience and you only have 6 months. You can be a subject matter expert in that person's domain expertise because of the knowledge that you've been able to educate yourself on, right? And so I think becoming a trusted advisor really starts with knowing what the fuck you're talking about, right? If all you are an order taker, you're going to have the same results as internal talent acquisition teams. But when you can be a problem solver for your clients, that's really what's going to move the needle for your personal billings.
What's been a big failure in your career that ended up being a turning point?
Hmm. I mean, a lot of failures come to mind. Uh, One thing that I'll say is, I really wish that in 2021, we wouldn't have gotten fat and happy off of the phone just ringing off the hook for job orders. I wish we would have doubled in size in 2021, because I mean, revenue was sexy, net income was sexy, overhead was low. We had this false sense of accomplishment that we were killing it, but really it was just a byproduct of a hot market, right? And so I would say that like my biggest failure was that I misinterpreted sales with being that we were good. And I wish that we would have started to really investing in our processes, systems, and technology sooner, because then we probably wouldn't be doing 14 million this year. We'd probably be doing 25 million.
How do you def- how do you define a success today versus 10 years ago?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, it was all about revenue. Um, I think back at 2015, we're probably $1 million in revenue. I was killing it, making $700,000 a year. I had a big ego. Um, I always knew that I was the smartest person in every room that I was in. I was cocky. I was arrogant. I was not a joy to be around, but I made a lot of money. And, and dude, I lost a lot of friends. Um, I wasn't a very present father. I was on my way of getting divorced, right? How I benchmark what I thought was success in 2015, which was revenue and profit, versus how I see success today is I think it's how the people that I love talk about me whenever I'm not in the room, you know? It's what my kids say about me. It's what my fiance says about me. It's what my team says about me. That really is the benchmark of success. I think it's your reputation. And the only way to really, achieve that goals is by living a life of character and integrity, right? Doing what you say you're going to do, and following through you know, with all that.
I mean, that kind of goes into the next question. Like, how do you balance everything? Like family, business, personal brand, like
Mhm.
everything that you're juggling.
Yeah. Um, I, man, I think it's all integrated. If you're the founder, CEO, um, I can't speak to a person that's just an individual contributor recruiter because we do encourage our people to have work-life balance, but um my personal Instagram, I talk about my company all the time, right? My company Instagram, I showcase my personal life, my kids, right? My fiance is at our office, 2 days out of the week and has her own office, right? I mean, she's our our chief culture officer probably, right? Like increasing morale. And so I would say that it's all integrated and it doesn't necessarily need to be balanced in a sense because you're going to go through different seasons of life where you need to invest maybe more time in your business or more time as a father or more time as a spouse or more time traveling for adventure and fun. And so I would say that just recognizing that it's all one cohesive unit where all of your mission, vision, and values should be fully aligned, right? The core values that I live by at work cannot be different core values than what I live by in my personal life. Not at all.
All right. I'm gonna just jump over to the Q&A part from everybody. So give me a few minutes to grab these. Tony is asking, how did your niche evolve annually? What did you start with and how did you decide on what to add in?
Excellent. So I went to the University of Houston. My degree plan was actually in mathematics, and so I identify as being somewhat of a data scientist, even though I don't have a formal certification in that. And so really was like analyzing the data of, okay, if I know that in wealth management, I've got an 88% close ratio, let me lean into that. Let me focus on getting more job orders, right? And Tony's a buddy of mine, right? That specializes in that vertical, right? And I'd like to think that it might be as a result of a conversation that he and I had 2 years ago whenever he was getting his firm off the ground. But with that being said, it's really analyzing the data and recognizing the why behind the what. So having an inquisitive mindset. And so every single quarter, whenever we do our executive offsite, we look at the job orders that we got, we analyze why we got them. We look at the job orders we filled, why we filled them. And so, right now in this new season, we've identified that our biggest, revenue generating verticals is companies that are private equity and venture capital backed, right? So like whenever they get that growth capital, let's say it's $40 million from Main Street Capital and they're a mid-sized B2B industrial service company, they need to put that growth capital to work. And so they're going to be looking for salespeople. They're going to need to upgrade their marketing, right? They're going to have a clearly defined go-to-market strategy. They're going to need to upgrade their information systems, their financial reporting. They're going to have to open up new product lines, new geo markets. And so by investing in that specific vertical, it doesn't matter what the industry, what the portco is in. We know that instead of making one placement, we're going to make 5 placements. And so really it's analyzing the data and understanding the why behind the what.
All right. Next one is there a reason your team didn't want to tap into the staffing and the contract side of the house?
That's a great question. So if you would like to start the contract staffing business for Encore Search Partners, please DM me. So I don't have any agency experience, man. I didn't work for a staffing agency. And so I think that it's one of those situations where I'm just limited, where I don't know what I don't know. Just like I gave, Casey and Scott those 6-figure salaries, 10 years ago, I would love an opportunity to give someone a 6-figure salary to be the managing director to commercialize contract staffing or management consulting for Encore Search Partners.
What are your main BD channels when you first started, and what did you implement later on to help skyrocket the business?
So there's where you get a little bit close to the secret sauce, Benjamin, right? I'll tell you that when we first started, it was super heavy email marketing. And then we started to see that our deliverability, was being significantly impacted, maybe right around like 2017, 2018. I think when a lot of the end users were migrating towards Google servers, AWS servers, that they had far more sophisticated spam control parameters. We started to see our reply rates going from 18% to sub 2%. And so we no longer do email marketing. And so, most of the people that follow me on LinkedIn know that we do invest a lot of time in our branding and social media, whether it's our company page or my own personal page. And so I would say that's probably the biggest revenue source is migrating away from lead generation and focusing more on demand generation through authentic storytelling.
Next is Brandon. I'm at the point with my direct placement company that I want to look at growing my team. What would be your step one to get that ball rolling?
That's a great question. I don't know what Brandon's revenue is. I don't know how many employees he has. Um, what worked for me was hiring somebody that if I told them the sky was purple, the sky was purple. If I told them that, anything, they would just listen to me. And so, like, in the very beginning, what I think small business owners need is just more bandwidth. And so you may not necessarily need somebody that's going to come in to completely transform your business because you've created success to this point in your career. And so for me, I brought in Scott Kelly, at the VP level. And he was somebody that I'd been in Vistage with, for about 8 months. He had heard me voice my fears, my anxieties, my insecurities. And he was actually a close personal friend of mine, but they were kind of like skipping him over for a VP promotion. And so I gave him the VP title, gave him the VP comp structure, and I taught him the recruiting business. And so the reason why it worked for us is I was still his role model in recruiting, but then he could be the tactical implementer for everything business process.
And this is actually from the person who spoke right before you, Greg. How did you delegate to get to this point? What is a system for a leader to delegate to get away from working a desk?
Absolutely. EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, was transformative for us. I know there's other similar frameworks like scaling up and things of that nature. And so what I'll say is so you got to look at Casey and I, right? Casey and I are the rainmakers, right? We generate all the clients. And then Scott is the integrator. So he's the one, people, processes, and systems. And so by implementing EOS and having a systems integrator like Scott has been the catalyst to help us hold ourselves accountable to achieving those near and long-term goals.
And Greg, just to let you know, the very last speaker on the bonus day Monday, she's focusing all on EOS for recruiting companies. And next question is curious how you structure things internally to drive results, weekly meetings, daily huddles, etc. And secondly, what is your minimum threshold that you have to start a performance coach on someone up or out of your organization?
So like a PIP is what that second part was, I would imagine. Okay.
I'm thinking so.
Yeah. So the teams operate completely independently, right? So you've got our generalist team, you've got our legal team, and then our wealth management team. Different practice leaders for each and every one of those. They all had their different daily or weekly cadences. I know they do Teams a lot, right? They like Microsoft Teams. They share a lot of information. They share a lot of wins, insights. I think whenever I look at other recruiting firms, whenever they get insider information, they want to like keep it to themselves. They don't want to share it for their team. But we don't really have a scarcity mindset at Encore Search. We have this kind of like abundance mindset. And we tend to think that we have about 1% market share in the verticals that we play in. And so our people have the mentality that like there's enough to go around, right? Just because I gained a new client doesn't mean that you had to lose a client. So we do a lot of knowledge share. With regards to team trainings, I think there's a different mid-level manager that leads a different training every single week, but it's always at the same time every single week. So like the financial team is every Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. So like from 11 to 1, and we bring in lunch. For the generalist team, every Thursday at 2 p.m. they've got their 2-hour meeting. But it's a different mid-level manager that's presenting on something they might be a subject matter expert in. Sometimes it's our CRM, right? Sometimes it's our internal SharePoint ecosystem or something like that. But it's typically around systems and processes and probably a little bit less on recruiting strategies or something like that. I tend to believe that you can be successful, your own way. You don't need to recruit the same way that I recruit, right? But if you have shared vision, mission, and values, then we're all going to have the same result because we all know the same thing that we're working towards. And then in the second part of that, the performance improvement plan, dude, I tend to think that the people that need to be on performance improvement plans are the ones that are like killing it, because sometimes they're the ones that get a little lazy, they get a little fat and happy, they get a little bit cocky or arrogant or entitled. And so I think that what I benchmark of the people that need improvement might be way different than what other firms think of what needs to improve. Just because you're year to date 110,000 in billings, that doesn't mean you're an underperformer at Encore Search Partners. You might be the new guy that's getting the scraps, right? You might be getting the 90K operations manager searches. Well, I'm not going to bog down, Andrew Johnson, who's doing president and C-level placements all day, right? And so I tend to think that that the end all be all is not just billings, right? It's KPIs. What's your call volume? How many submittals? How many interviews? That the revenue will always solve for itself. But if you're not hitting those KPIs, we have a problem.
This is what is your go-to method approach for landing new clients? I know you kind of mentioned that already, but you could probably just say like if you want to cover that.
Yeah,
And
so
what's
the quick answer is demand generation, guys, right? How many times do we go out and chase business, the people that don't know us? And then we have to, number one, first of all, establish ourselves as a credible resource for them. Take time to build trust, right? We've got to invest in that relationship to build rapport. And sometimes there might be two or three other vendors inside of there. But if I can create a mechanism that creates enough demand to make that client reach out to me because I'm the best, because I close deals, because I make money, because I'm a subject matter expert in the vertical in which they operate, then you shorten that cycle to build trust, rapport, and credibility whenever you create demand for them to reach out for you. So that's what we do at Encore Search.
and somebody asked, do you ever have a mentor or mentors that helped you with scaling?
Great question. So I've never had a mentor to help me with scaling. I'll go back and to say that the mentor is a system called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. But I've had several mentors over the years, and it's not been one person to say this is my mentor, right? But it's been this person that's been a mentor and somebody that I respected and admired for who they are as a father, for who this person is as a husband, for who this person is as a Christian, for who this person is as a public speaker, for this person as, somebody that prioritizes health and fitness, right? And so I've got so many role models in my life that motivate and inspire me to level up in every single different category to where they might even be a mentor and not even know it.
All right, I think we went through all the questions. Real quick, drop an emoji in the chat. Your thoughts on Jeremy sharing today. So while we're letting that go, like I said, like if you've gotten anything that really is going to really move the needle, share this on LinkedIn. Like throw a quick shout out to Jeremy on LinkedIn. Be like, hey, like I pulled this and this away from the talk. I know one person mentioned about starting a brand, or the way of starting your brand is like by being out there, showing what's happening. And actually, here's a question I made disappear. For somebody that's just now starting their brand, what's the best piece of advice for them?
Authenticity. I think that that's the number one component of it, right? If you're passionate about the LGBT community and you post about it and you're proud of it, you will automatically attract people that are also passionate about that, right? I think that there's this fear that you don't need to piss people off, but I think that if you lead from a position of authenticity and it's real, authentic, and organic, that is the key to building trust and rapport in a specific vertical, right? And I think we all know that there's tens of thousands of direct hire fees that get paid nationally every single year, right? and there's enough to go around. But if you're trying to compete the same with the same message and the same AI content and AI scripts as everybody else, that you're going to compete yourself all the way to the bottom, right? But if you lead from a position of authenticity, that's the key in order to build trust, rapport, and credibility in this industry.
Oh man, talk about a perfect way to end it, Jeremy. I just want to say thank you. I know we chatted about this was it back in March when I was like, hey, putting a new summit together, and you're like, I want to be there to share. So excited that you're part of this. For everybody, I'll work on getting the replay up soon, and we'll give you guys a quick break before the next session. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Benjamin.